In this brief presentation, we will have an overview of the standards or the national professional standards for teachers in Pakistan. What are the minimum standards required of professionals to become teachers? This is a question that we will briefly respond to. First of all, what is the concept of standards? Generally, standards are a set of guidelines that outline the knowledge, the skills, competencies, and dispositions expected of teachers in order to ensure quality education. So, having that set of knowledge, skills, competencies, and dispositions is expected to result in the provision of quality education on the part of teachers. Now, there are certain benchmarks that are required for people to be eligible for the profession of teaching, to continue working in the profession, to enhance their professional development, keeping in view these standards. And these standards also help in the evaluation or accountability process of the teaching profession. And lastly, these standards are important for ensuring quality that teachers provide to students. Now, here is a bit of a historical background to the national professional standards in Pakistan for teachers. Now, the first one is that the National Professional Standards for Teachers were developed in 2009 by the Ministry of Education with support from various stakeholders. And so these stakeholders include the provincial governments, the teacher training institutions, and educationists, the international organizations such as UNESCO and USAID. Now, why is it that we need standards for teachers? So first of all, standards actually ensure consistency and unification of a training framework for enhancing quality and standardization. Secondly, the developmental process of the National Professional Standards for teachers involved consultation with education experts, teachers, policymakers, national and international organizations, and other stakeholders in order to develop this set of national standards for teachers. Now, what are the aims of developing national professional standard for teachers? So, first of all, as we said in the beginning, standards are expected to enhance the quality of teaching. Secondly, the standards help in the process of professionalizing or bringing professionalism to the teaching profession. Thirdly, standards help in supporting teachers' development. So, in the light of standards, there could be programs and trainings aimed at the development of teachers. Besides this, standards are aimed at improving student outcomes or student learning outcomes. And lastly, standards can help us in promoting accountability of the teaching profession or of the teachers in terms of their performance and in terms of their work in educational institutions. Now, here is the list of the standards that are in place in Pakistan. So, the first one is that teachers should have sufficient adequate subject matter knowledge, and it is extremely important. Whatever subject teachers are teaching, they should have sufficient and adequate knowledge of that. Secondly, these standards look at the aspect of teachers where they are able to help in the process of to help understand and develop the process of human growth and development. So teachers should have this ability to have an understanding of how humans grow, the various stages of, for example, the child development and the child growth. So both their physical, their psychological, and their educational development. This skill, this knowledge is important for teachers. So this is the second standard. Thirdly, teachers should have knowledge of Islamic ethical values and social life skills. As an Islamic society, the Pakistani teachers need to understand the values, and especially the ethical values in the light of Islamic injunctions. They also need to have to understand the social skills that are required of teachers, of students, in order to be useful members of the society. Thirdly, instructional planning and strategies. This is an important standard. So teachers, their basic role is to instruct and to teach. That is why it is important for them to understand how to plan instruction, how to plan their teaching, how to devise various strategies in order to teach effectively. Next, assessment is an essential part of education. And so teachers need to have the abilities and skills to understand and apply the concept of assessment in order to assess students' learning and the outcomes of their teaching. So there are various types of assessments, such as formative assessment, summative assessment, continuous assessment, and so teachers need to diagnostic assessment. Teachers need to have good knowledge of the assessment processes and techniques in order to be effective teachers. Next, teachers need to have the ability to develop an effective, useful, and conducive learning environment inside the class, outside the class. This is extremely important. Teachers who do not have the knowledge or skills to develop and to create effective learning environment will not be considered as effective teachers. The seventh standard is effective communication and proficiency in the use of ICTs. Communication is at the very essence of teaching. It is therefore important for teachers to understand verbal communication and non-verbal communication with students and with colleagues, with the co-workers in the school, in the educational institutions. Besides this, because of the modern revolution in terms of ICT and the increasing role of the information communication technologies in educational institutions and in the process of dissemination of knowledge inside and outside the class, it is important for teachers to develop skills and knowledge of the use of ICTs to use these modern communication technologies for the process of teaching. So this is an important standard. Then collaboration and partnerships. Collaboration with teachers, with colleagues, collaboration with parents and students, partnerships with colleagues in other educational institutions, partnerships with groups in the society who have a stake in the process of education. These are important skills. So the skills of collaboration and partnerships with people inside school, with groups in the society, with political organizations is extremely important, and teachers need to have these skills in order to qualify for this standard. Next is continuous professional development and code of conduct. Again, teaching is a profession that needs to deal with the challenges of the ever changing requirements of the society. The world is changing around. Schools are preparing people, students, for the world, for the changes in the society, for economic and social changes and challenges. That is why it is important that teachers need to continuously develop themselves professionally and academically, and they need to follow certain code of conduct that is required of them as teachers in order to be effective teachers, in order to be considered as professionals. And lastly, the teaching of English as a second language or foreign language has been included as an important standard. This is important because English as a second language or as a foreign language is an important language, and teachers and students need to know, to have good knowledge of, or at least working knowledge of English in order to find good, especially students, to find jobs in the market, to develop professionally and academically. But at the same time, this standard is a bit odd in the sense that it is just focusing on one language, which is like specially required for teachers of English. So maybe other teachers do not need this expertise in English. Although it is important, one could argue that this standard could be broader, maybe including the capacity of teachers to teach other languages as well. Now we move on to the last one. There are certain challenges as well in terms of the standards or the implications and applications of the standards in a practical sense. So standards are there, but then we need to have resources, and in many cases there is this case of resource limitation. So many schools, especially in rural areas, they lack resources to train teachers for these standards or to conduct evaluation based on these standards. Similarly, professional development, again, continuous professional development is a challenge in the sense that there is need for ongoing teacher training programs, but there are limited opportunities for this, again mainly because of limited resources, and so this could hinder teachers from meeting the standards fully. Next, monitoring and accountability are important aspects in order to ensure standardization. Again, generally there is a weak monitoring system, and so there are inconsistent accountability measures that ultimately mean that in many educational institutions it will be difficult to enforce standards. And lastly, contextual adaptation. So although standards are good because they ensure uniformity of quality of education in educational institutions, but standards might also have certain limitations, especially while standards can offer universal frameworks, sometimes they fail to address region-specific contextual issues such as, for example, language barriers or socio-economic challenges. So we need to have standards, but at the same time we need to keep these challenges that come alongside the standardization process. So this is generally a brief overview of the professional standards that are required for teachers in Pakistan.